The Celebration of Intellect by Ralph Waldo Emerson. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Philip Weichselbaum. I cannot consent to wander from the duties of this day into the fracas of politics. The brute noise of cannon has, I know, a most poetic echo in these days, when it is an instrument of freedom and the primal sentiments of humanity. Yet it is but representative and a far-off means and servant. But here in the college we are in the presence of the constituency and the principle itself. Here is, or should be, the majesty of reason and the creative cause. And it were a compounding of all gradation and reverence to suffer the clash of swords and the boyish strife of passion and the feebleness of military strength to intrude on this sanctity and omnipotence of intellectual law. Against the heroism of soldiers I set the heroism of scholars, which consists in ignoring the other. You shall not put up in your academy the statue of Caesar or Pompey, of Nelson or Wellington, of Washington or Napoleon, of Garibaldi, but of Archimedes, of Milton, of Newton. Archimedes disdained to apply himself to the useful arts, only to the liberal or the causal arts. Hero the king reproached him with his barren studies. Like Thales, he was willing to show him that he was quite able in rude matters, if he could condescend to them, and he conducted the defense of Syracuse against the Romans. Then he returned to his geometry, and when the Roman soldier at the sack of Syracuse broke into his study, the philosopher could not rise from his chair and his diagram, and took his death without resistance. Michelangelo gave himself to art, despising all meaner pursuits. When the war came to his own city, he lent his genius and defended Florence as long as he was obeyed. Milton congratulates the Parliament that, whilst London is besieged and blocked, the Thames infested, inroads and excursions round, and battle-oft rumour to be marching up to her walls and suburb trenches, yet then are the people, or the greater part, more than at other times, wholly taken up with the study of highest and most important matters to be performed, they reasoning, reading, inventing, discoursing, even to a rarity and admiration, things not before discoursed or written, and the fact argues a just confidence in the grandeur and self-subsistency of the cause of religious liberty, which made all material war an impertinence. For either science and literature is a hypocrisy, or it is not. If it be, then resign your charter to the legislature, turn your college into barracks and warehouses, and divert the funds of your founders into the stock of a rope walk, or a candle factory, a tan yard, or some other undoubted conveniency for the surrounding population. But if the intellectual interest be, as I hold, no hypocrisy, but the only reality, then it behooves us to enthrone it, obey it, and give it possession of us and ours, to give, among other possessions, the college into its hand, casting down every idol, every pretender, every hoary, every dignified blunder that has crept into its administration. At this season the colleges keep their anniversaries, and in this country where education is a primary interest, every family has a representative in their halls, a son, a brother, or one of our own kindred is there for his training. But even if we had no son or friend therein, yet the college is part of the community, and it is there for us, is training our teachers, civilizers, and inspirers. It is essentially the most radiating and public of agencies, like, but better than, the lighthouse, or the alarm bell, or the sentinel who fires a signal cannon, or the telegraph which speeds the local news over the land. Besides, it deals with a force which it cannot monopolize or confine, cannot give to those who come to it and refuse to those outside. I have no doubt of the force, and for me the only question is whether the force is inside. This power which it deals is dear to all. If the colleges were better, if they had any monopoly of it, nay, if they really had it, had the power of imparting valuable thought, creative principles, truths which become powers, thoughts which become talents, if they could cause a mind not profound should become profound, we should all rush to their gates. Instead of contriving inducements to draw students, you would need to set police at the gates to keep order in the inrushing multitude. These are giddy times, and, you say, the college will be deserted. No, never was it so much needed. But I say, those were the giddy times which went before these, and the new times are the times of arraignment, times of trial, and times of judgment. Just because the college was false to its trust, because the scholars did not learn and teach, because they were traitors and left their altars and libraries and worship of truth and played the sycophant to presidents and generals and members of Congress and gave degrees and literary and social honors to those whom they ought to have rebuked and exposed, incurring the contempt of those whom they ought to have put in fear, then the college is suicidal, ceases to be a school. Power oozes out of it just as fast as truth does. And instead of overawing the strong and upholding the good, it is a hospital for decayed tutors. This integrity over all partial knowledge and skill, homage to truth, how rare! Few men wish to know how the thing really stands, what is the law of it without reference to persons. Other men are victims of their means. Sanity consists in not being subdued by your means. Two men cannot converse together on any topic without presently finding where each stands in moral judgment, and each learns whether the other's view commands or is commanded by his own. I presently know whether my companion has more candor or less, more hope for men or less, whether his sense of duty is more or less severe and his generosity larger than mine, whether he stands for ideal justice or for a timorous expediency. Society is always idolatrous and exaggerates the merits of those who work to vulgar ends. But genius may be known by its probity. Never was pure valor, and almost I might say never pure ability, shown in a bad cause. For ambition makes insane. Society is always taken by surprise at any new example of common sense and of simple justice as at a wonderful discovery. Thus, at Mr. Rary's mode of taming a horse by kindness, or Garibaldi's emancipation of Italy for Italy's sake, at the introduction of gentleness into insane asylums, and of cleanliness and comfort into penitentiaries. A farmer wished to buy an ox. The seller told him how well he had treated the animal. "But," said my farmer, "I asked the ox, and the ox showed me by marks that could not lie that he had been abused." We affect to slight England and Englishmen, but I note that we had a vast self-esteem on the subject of Bunker Hill, Yorktown, and New Orleans. We should not think it much to beat Indians or Mexicans, but to beat English. The English newspapers and some writers of reputation disparage America. Meantime, I note that the British people are emigrating hither by thousands, which is a very sincere and apt to be a very seriously considered expression of opinion. The emigration into America of British, as well as of continental people, is the eulogy of America by the most competent and sincere arbiters. The hater of property and of government takes care to have his warranty deed recorded, and the book written against fame and learning has the author's name on the title page. Gentlemen, I too am an American and value practical talent. I love results and hate abortions. I delight in people who can do things. I value talent, perhaps no man more. I value dearly the poet who knows his art so well that, when his voice vibrates, it fills the hearer with sympathetic song, just as a powerful note of an organ sets all tuned strings in its neighborhood in accordant vibration. The novelist with his romance, the architect with his palace, the composer with a score. I wish you to be eloquent, to grasp the bolt and to hurl it home to the mark. I wish to see that Mirabeau who knows how to seize the heartstrings of the people and drive their hands and feet in the way he wishes them to go, to fill them with himself, to enchain men so that their will and purpose is in abeyance, and they serve him with a million hands, just as implicitly as his own members obey him. But I value it more when it is legitimate, when the talent is in true order, subject to genius, subject to the total and native sentiment of the man, and therefore in harmony with the public sentiment of mankind. Such is the patriotism of Demosthenes, of Patrick Henry, and of what was best in Cicero and Burke. Not an ingenious special pleading, not the making a plausible case, but strong by the strength of the facts themselves. Then the orator is still one of the audience, persuaded by the same reasons which persuade them, not a ventriloquist, not a juggler, not a wire puller paid to manage the lobby and caucus. In Demosthenes is this realism of genius. He wins his cause honestly. His doctrine is self-reliance. If it please you to note it, my counsels to you are not such whereby I should grow great among you, and you become little among the Grecians. But they be of that nature as is sometimes not good for me to give, but are always good for you to follow. You, gentlemen, are selected out of the great multitude of your mates, out of those who began life with you, set apart through some strong persuasion of your own or of your friends, that you were capable of the high privilege of thought. Need enough there is of such a band of priests of intellect and knowledge, and great is the office, and well deserving and well paying the last sacrifices and the highest ability. But I wish this were a needless task, to urge upon you scholars the claims of thought and learning. The author of the world educates with care the senses and the understanding. Men are as they think. A certain quantity of power belongs to a certain quantity of truth. And the man who knows any truth not yet discerned by other men is master of all other men, so far as that truth and its wide relations are concerned. Do you suppose that the thunderbolt falls short? Do you imagine that a lie will nourish and work like a truth? The whole battle is fought in a few heads. A little finer order, a larger angle of vision, commands centuries of facts and millions of thoughtless people. It reserves all rank. He who discriminates is the father of his father. And yet the world is not saved. With this divine oracle, we somehow do not get instructed. Here are still perverse millions full of passion, crime, and blood. Here are bad governors and bad subjects. Nay, in the class called intellectual, the men are no better than the uninstructed. They use their wit and learning in the service of the devil. There are bad books and false teachers and corrupt judges, and in the institutions of education a want of faith in their own cause. Nay, it happens often that the well-bred and refined, the inhabitants of cities, dwelling amidst colleges, churches, and scientific museums, lectures, poets, libraries, newspapers, and other aids supposed intellectual, are more vicious and malignant than the rude country people, and need to have their corrupt voting and violence corrected by the cleaner and wiser suffrages of poor farmers.